Hey, what's up, folks? I'm recording this from sunny Las Vegas. I'm back here for another tournament, my third tournament in Vegas this year, North American Open. I just got done with round one, and as usual, I'll be trying to review some of my games, as many as I can, during the tournament. If I run out of time or if a game goes late, I might skip and delay it till later. This is something I've been doing for a couple of years now because I feel like, number one, it's really good for me to review my games quickly and go through them carefully. Number two, I think it's also useful for you guys, I hope, to go through the games right away and hopefully get some instructive value. So this was my first round game against Roshen Nair, who is a junior. FIDE rating around 1988, USCF a little bit higher, like 2120. And I know a lot of you guys probably have already seen the result to this game if you're following the game live, but for those of you that don't know the result, I won't spoil it because I always get comments that people don't want to hear the result before the game is over. On the other hand, sometimes when I show my games like on stream, there'll be tons and tons of questions like, oh, what was the result? What was the result? Like, people really want to know ahead of time as they're watching. So I don't really know what to do. For this video, I won't spoil it, but for future videos, you guys let me know what you prefer, whether you want to know the result ahead of time or not. I'll do my best not to give it away. So white started with c4. I played g6. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this game. I just had enough time to see that my opponent plays the English, although he could have come up with a different move and it wouldn't have been too big of a deal. Because I didn't really prepare much, I feel quite comfortable against the English as a King's Indian player. I like starting with g6 on move 1, actually to delay the knight from developing to f6. We'll see this in the game as well. I think the knight can often be very useful on e7, so I think this is kind of a more flexible setup. And ultimately, I'm just going for symmetrical English here, which I've always liked from black's point of view because I'm just copying white, and at a certain point, white has to kind of decide their setup, and then black can kind of choose how we want to develop from here. So I'm quite fond of playing like e6 and knight g7 in these positions, and castling, maybe even b6, bishop to b7, depending on what white does. Here my opponent played e4, which I was pretty surprised by. This is known as the Botvinnik system. And to me, it has a very clear drawback that white gives up this d4 square. I think it is playable, but I've always felt like black is very, very comfortable in this line. So I go e6, very important move to cover the d5 square. And now I just get on with it with my development, bishop to e3. And now that white is starting to push d4, this is exactly the time that black should plonk the knight into d4 and not allow white this break. Here white played rook to b1. Typical move, playing for like a3, b4. I decided to go knight c6, a3, and here I played b6. So this is a very typical move for this kind of position. The bishop, I think, does pretty well on b7. The only move I was a little bit concerned by was e5, which of course opens a diagonal, and if I take, then white can take on d4, and I'm going to have too many pieces hanging. But I planned to meet this one just with bishop to b7. Actually, during the game, I was going to choose either bishop to b7, where after e takes d6, queen takes d6, I think black is fine. Or I can even throw in knight takes e2 check first. And then after white recaptures, bishop to b7, again, I think black is okay. Like knight takes e2, bishop b7, d4, for example. In the game, I was thinking I would play takes, and knight a5. And once the light square bishops get traded in this position, I think generally black is at least okay, sometimes even better. Here I thought black is fine, and it's probably close to equal, but I thought it would be very comfortable here. The engine actually points out it'd be stronger to just play knight a5 without taking on d4 and just preparing to recapture on b7. And then all of white's pawns in the center are quite loose, and the bishop on g7 is, of course, a really good piece here. So, yeah, ultimately I felt like I had options here, so I didn't... I spent a little bit of time to make sure that I'm okay, but I figured I would decide if e5 was played. Instead, white played b4, which I think I mainly expected. But this move doesn't scare me too much because just bishop b7, and now black is fully developed pretty much. So f4, queen d7. Not really doing anything special here, just improving my position. I was thinking about playing f5 soon, maybe bringing the rook somewhere to like c8 or d8. And the problem for white is that it's just not really clear what to do, because the knight on d4 is quite good, and white doesn't really have any obvious pawn breaks. Taking on c5 I think is usually not great because of dc, opening up the d file, and then the d3 pawn is going to be weak. So yeah, white ends up going bishop f2, which I thought was quite logical, kind of preparing to take on d4 with the knight, because then c takes d4 isn't as bad for white. But now I played f5, and I thought this was quite reasonable. It's a pretty thematic idea, just to put some pressure on the light squares. And now I think white starts to go wrong. He plays b takes c5. At this point, I actually already felt quite comfortable, and I think black is already maybe even a little bit better. But I thought white should just sit and try to do nothing, and yeah, then it'll be up to black to figure out how to continue. You know, maybe e5 at some point. Maybe I just keep improving my position, like king h8, rook a d8. I wasn't really sure. But of course, white can't just sit forever. At some point, he has to do something. So he decided to take on c5, which is probably not great, because after dc, I'm hitting d3. And yeah, it's just kind of this long-term pressure that's very unpleasant for white. So e5 was the follow-up. And this move is very logical, shutting down the dark squared bishop, but strategically I think black is already winning here, because once these light squared bishops get traded, I think white's king is just going to be way too weak on this diagonal, especially with the queen on b7. Now it's actually funny, on e5, I noticed, I didn't realize this before, but when he played it, I realized I actually have this idea to go knight takes e5, which I thought was really interesting, because the idea is that if bishop takes b7, queen takes b7, I have two knights that can hit the f3 square. And so if white takes on e5, then knight f3 check. This is just a disaster. I think white is just getting mated, like king g2, knight e1. I didn't really calculate further. I just assumed this would lead to mate, and yeah, I think it does. Takes, and the king goes for a walk, and mate next move, bishop h6. So I thought this was actually a really cool idea. And if knight takes e5, fe, then bishop takes g2, king takes g2, queen b7 check. And either white has to give back the piece, like knight e4 or something, or allow knight f3, or play king h3. Or okay, black has sacrificed the piece, but I thought I was calculating g5 here, and to me it just looked like white is just getting mated. g4 is the threat. If white plays g4, then we'll go fg and queen f3 check. And so, yeah, this looked really, really bad. So while I was thinking about this, I felt like, okay, probably white is going to have to take on d4 at some point. Maybe bishop takes b7 first, let's say queen takes b7, and then take on d4 here with something like knight takes d4, covering the f3 square. So then black recaptures, fe, d takes c3, and yeah, I felt like this should be really good for black. We want a pawn, e5 is hanging, so I thought white should probably play d4, and I imagine black is probably close to winning here, but I wasn't sure if this was actually like the most I could get from the position. So I was thinking here, like I could go rook c8, and by the time white takes on c3, I'll try to win the c4 pawn, and that should be good, like rook c8, queen c6. I think the engine says the best move here is bishop h6, which I considered, but I didn't realize I can just play bishop d2 and defend the pawn. And if white plays like bishop e1, then it's just, yeah, really bad. Black is going to come in like queen e4, rook d8, and so on. So yeah, engine gives black, decisive advantage here. I thought it was winning, but I kind of just wanted to play for more. It was also possible for white to take here with the bishop, but then it's kind of similar. Takes. White goes d4, and yeah, white might be able to win back the c3 pawn, but everything else in white's position is very, very weak, and yeah, I have a lot of pressure here, like rook d8, rook c8, and so on. So yeah, I mean, the engine I checked with Stokovich after the game confirms that this was winning and this was the way to go. But yeah, I don't know. During the game, it's like sometimes you win a pawn, but then you have to, it takes like 2 more hours to convert it from there. So I kind of thought it would be stronger just to keep more tension on the board. So I ended up playing knight takes e2 check. Now this one is a little bit of a trap. If queen takes e2, which looks more natural to connect rooks and put the rook on d1, then knight d4 surprisingly just wins for black, because the queen is under attack. If bishop takes d4, queen takes d4 check, hitting the knight. If queen f2, for example, then first I throw in bishop takes g2. It's kind of funny how it all works out for black. If white recaptures right away, then I take the knight. If queen takes d4, c takes d4 also hits the knight, and so white is losing a piece in the end. So because of this, white is forced to take knight takes e2. But now rook a8, my idea was just to put pressure on this pawn and make it really awkward for white to defend. Now I didn't win the pawn like in the other variation, but I thought black has a ton of pressure here, and my next move actually is probably going to be g5, because now white has to defend the pawn, either knight c1 or rook b3 here. White played rook b3, now I go g5, and yeah, I feel like it's just a matter of time before I break through. So bishop e3, My opponent was definitely defending well this phase of the game, but it's a tough position, so it's hard to really make a lot of suggestions for white. I considered lots of different things here, like, for example, taking on f4 was one of my ideas to open up the g file and then try to put a rook on g8 and play for against white's king. And yeah, I think in the long run, it's very, very difficult, again, because of these light squares. The queen is always coming to b7, so I have knight a5 at any moment. But I didn't want to take too quickly, because then that gives the knight a square on g3 to possibly block the g file. So I decided to just take it slow. I started with rook to f7 here. And the idea is just to kind of slowly improve the position. I want to go like king h8, maybe rook g8, maybe even h5, h4 somewhere. Maybe I might even play g4 and then start running the h-pawn. The point is actually just wanted to keep my options open, because I didn't see any move that white has to really improve their position or do anything active. For instance, if white tries to go d4, this is always just bad. Okay, here it's just losing a pawn. Immediately later on, white can try d4 as well, but the problem is the position opens up, and yeah, the king just ends up being too weak. c4 pawn also gets weakened here, so it's very hard to make any of this work for white. So rook c3, white has nothing to do but to kind of stay put. King h8, I continue just improving my position and just leaving this pawn on g5. Of course, if white ever takes and knight takes e5, again, too many lines open up and I get this g4 square, and it's really, really dangerous for white. So king h1, I played rook to g8. And here, for example, white could try to play d4 because I moved the rook off of the d file, but it just doesn't work concretely. In fact, there was a nice idea here after takes. I was thinking knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and if bishop takes d4, well, then I thought, okay, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, and I can go like rook d8, and this pin on the d file is super annoying. I have queen c6 check ideas, followed by bringing the other rook to d7, and then even like queen e4, and I actually thought white is just like losing a piece here, maybe even by force, like something like check, and then rook d7, just like super, super dangerous. But the really nice line is I thought, okay, maybe white will go queen takes d4, you know, not to get the bishop pinned, but here I have bishop takes g2, king takes g2, queen c6 check, and anywhere white goes, let's say king g1, rook d7, turns out to trap white's queen in the center of the board, which I thought was kind of a nice trick. This is not the only reason I think d4 is bad, but this is just the main one I calculated. Instead, white played rook f2, just trying to defend g2 in advance. I played bishop f8 here. Now, the engine actually is suggesting to take on f4 in a lot of these positions, and I actually just missed something very simple. I thought after gf4, you know, again, the knight is going to g3, and I didn't want to open up this square before it's too early. But what I totally overlooked is after bishop h6, I'm actually threatening to take on e5 here, because the bishop on e3 is hanging. So white owes black a very important tempo. Here has to play like queen d2 or something to defend the bishop, and then I get time to get rook g7. I can also go knight d4. Long story short, white is just not surviving on the king side, so I definitely could have done this. Even if white could play knight g3 here, by the way, and I can't take on e5, I still think it's a great position for black. Like rook g7, and it's just a ton of pressure, but in any case, I wanted to just keep the tension. Also, at this point, this is move 22. My opponent was already approaching pretty heavy time trouble. I think he had like less than 20 minutes here to make like 18 more moves, maybe even less, like 15 minutes or so. So I thought it was very unpleasant just not to take anything, not to commit to anything on the king side, and just kind of improve the bishop. Now the bishop is coming to e7. Maybe I'll throw h5, h4 in at some point. And yeah, I think it's really, really tough for white. So white goes knight g1. I thought this was very logical. This is the only way to kind of force black to do something. Bishop e7 I played, knight f3, and now g4. And now, yeah, I decide to close the position. I mean, my idea for most of the game was to go gf4 and look for some tactics on the g file, like takes, rook g2, and something on the diagonal. But here I felt like this was actually just totally good enough. The knight can't really go knight h4 or knight g5. I'll just take it or trap the knight. So the knight went back, but now h5, and now the plan is very simple, just h4, rook h7, open up the h file at some point, or maybe even go h3. And yeah, I felt like in the long run, this attack on the h file, problem is just white has no moves, so it's just going to, just a matter of time before black breaks through. So king g1, h4, and the rest of the game was pretty straightforward, rook h7, knight c2. Here I thought for a little bit just to kind of make sure that I'm finally ready to do something and change the position. And I finally play knight d4 here. Of course, I could have played this move at any point, but I didn't want to. I wanted to save it because white is just going to be giving up the bishop anyway. But now I was pretty sure that I was definitely okay with all these traits. So take, rook b3. I took on g3 here, and I played rook g6. And now it's too late for white to do anything. The threat is just rook h6, and then some tactics on the h-file, and very, very simple. So, yeah, I don't think there's any way for white to defend here anymore. He played bishop takes b7. At this point, white's also in heavy, heavy time trouble. So, yeah, game is more or less over. Queen takes, rook g2, rook gh6. And now black is just infiltrating. Of course, the main threat is like, rook h1, just winning the queen. But I was really hoping to be able to play queen takes g2 here. For example, after like king f2, which I thought was natural. Of course, like rook h1 wins, rook h2 wins, but queen takes g2 is actually the fastest and the nicest way to end the game, leading to a forced mate with the two rooks. So, of course, I was hoping for that one. Instead, white played knight e1. But now rook h1 check, king f2. Okay, there are many wins. White is totally busted. But I definitely did not want to miss my chance to sack the queen in this style. So queen takes g2. If king takes, again, it's mate on the h-file. And after knight takes g2, well, rook takes d1, black won a rook. And yeah, my opponent resigned here. So overall, I felt pretty good about this game. It was pretty smooth. I don't think I was worse at any point, and just kind of a little bit better out of the opening, and then just slowly improve the position. I was quite happy with how I just kept pace. This was maybe a key moment where, I calculated knight takes d5, and so I was working, but decided, just to keep the tension, because I felt like in the long run it would just be more unpleasant for white to have to defend this d3 pawn the whole game and then deal with this nagging pressure on the king side. So yeah, felt pretty good about how I played this one. Next round will be starting in a couple of hours, so I'll definitely go rest up for that. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found the video instructive. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. And like I mentioned, I'll try to do these videos as much as I can. I like doing them directly after the game because then my thoughts are fresh and I don't have to remember as much, and so it's easier to discuss the game and describe exactly what happened, from my point of view at least. But yeah, if my games go late or I don't have a lot of time, I'm definitely going to put the videos on pause and definitely rest up for the next round and kind of focus on that. That said, if it's kind of borderline, I'm definitely much more likely to do these videos if there's a lot of engagement. So if you really want to see me doing these videos like right after the game, do leave a thumbs up on the video, leave a comment. If there's good numbers on YouTube, that'll definitely motivate me to do these videos much quicker. Otherwise, I might take a break, wait till after the tournament, and then record them when I'm not kind of scrambled for time. Because these 2 rounds a day tournaments are really brutal. The time control, I don't think I mentioned, is 40 moves for 100 minutes with an additional 30 minutes after that, and then 30-second increment. So the round can well last like up to 6 hours here if the game drags out quite a bit. So very important to get some rest. I think I'll try to go do that now. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.